It's really nice to be back home to one of my 5 homes, and I was raised on Springsteen, so there you go. Yeah, there you go. Good. I'm gonna ask you if you feel like you're far away, and you look like you're far away actually, and you want to drag your chair. There's a dance floor right here that is not being used for dancing at the moment. So please feel free to bring a chair, and you might be able to see the screen a little bit better.
Please do not hesitate.
Don't hesitate at any point if you
Don't
feel
be shy. Just move up.
If you feel like being closer. I'm not going to make you do that, but that's my contact info. If something I say you want to follow up and talk about it more, if something I mention, a report, you want a copy of the report, if you want a copy of the whole slide deck, I'd be happy to share that. So it's really easy to find, and I like keeping the conversations going. I'm a marine biologist by training and by passion, and I may be the first, possibly the last marine biologist to come and speak at your conferences. But I hope it makes perfect sense why I'm here by the time I get through my remarks. I'm going to speak for a little while over lunch here, then we're going to have a break, and then I'll continue kind of the second half in a workshop that will also be right here. And I know some of you will go to many of the other great workshops that are going on, but we'll kind of do the second half. I call it Go Deeper, right here. You know, we'll gather up here after. And oh yeah, a book signing if you want to grab a book. So here we are discovering our blue minds. It turns out I've been paying attention to your previous conferences. You like to gather on the edge of the water, right? Whether it's a lake or the ocean. And I saw some images of, I guess it was the reception last year, inside a water park. Yes. All right, so you may not understand why you gravitate towards water when you want to get together and chill out and reconnect with each other or yourself, but I do. That's what I study. I study the human connection to water, the cognitive, emotional, psychological, social, and spiritual benefits of being near, in, on, or underwater. And so now you might be able to start to connect the dots to why this makes sense for the educational work that you do. This is pretty much the summary of my entire talk. This is a Bruce Springsteen lyric, actually Tom Waits lyric as well, from Jersey Girl. Because down the shore, everything's all right. When I hear that song, my wife will tell you I tear up a little bit. And I'm not kidding. Because down the shore, everything's all right. Whether you're with your baby on a Saturday night or just with your best friend or with your kids, when you get there, everything feels all right. Yesterday, nothing was all right. But down the shore today, everything's all right. Just for a little while. Well, why is that? Partly it's because you left your problems behind. You know, you can be, down in the alley. It's not down in the alley, everything's all right. It's not, down at Safeway, everything's all right. It's down the shore, everything's all right. But Springsteen was ecumenical. He also liked rivers. He said, or sang, "We go down to the river, and into the river we dive." Another one of his great songs. And so whether it's the shore, or the river, or the lake, or the pool, or the pond, or the spring, or the splash park, or your bathtub, or your shower. Sometimes even just a glass of water or a bucket of water can make you feel all right. So here we are. You may be wondering why you have a blue marble, why you were handed a blue marble on your way. I'm going to ask you to find it if you've put it somewhere, and just take it out. This is what we look like from a million miles away. If you hold your blue marble up at arm's length, that's what we look like. If you could fly a million miles away, I guess depending on the length of your forearm, you might have to adjust a little bit to get the math right. If you could go a million miles away and turn around, that's what you'd look like. And this marble is a simple reminder that we live on this little blue planet because it's mostly a water planet. The late, great David Bowie said, "Far above the world, planet Earth is blue." And he sang that as well. And everything we do matters. Nothing is wasted. The good things, the bad things, the big things, the small things, they actually all matter because we live on this little planet. It doesn't feel little all the time, but from a million miles away, it really is the size of a blue marble. From a billion miles away, it's the size of a pixel. This little tiny blue planet. So NASA is looking for other planets like this one, and they're not finding very many. This is a pretty special place we call home. And it's the water that makes it great, among other things. And we don't accomplish anything alone. That's what the marble reminds me of, that we live on a water planet where everything matters, and that nobody really does anything alone. Standing here at this podium, this technology that's allowing me to press a button and change the slide, that machine itself, my shoes, the podium, our meal, thousands of people, maybe even tens of thousands of people made this moment possible. The chairs we're sitting in, the clothes we're wearing, right? The vehicles we got here in. None of us, you feel alone sometimes. You feel like maybe even you feel like you're the champion of something. But none of us ever work alone. We all work together all the time on everything we do. So you thought that was just a blue marble there in your pocket. It's a great teaching tool. And I think it's probably a teaching tool that will clear security if you care to take blue marbles into whatever teaching situation you're in. I once had my marbles confiscated by TSA, though, on my way onto a plane. And I told the agent that by taking my marbles from me, he was assuming the responsibility for that bag of 100 marbles. And I started to tell him this story, that he needed to pass the marbles on with gratitude and explain them. And he promptly handed them back to me. I didn't realize that marbles could be so dangerous, but I guess in the hands of the right people, they can be. They can be powerful. So I want to ask you this question. I want you to consider it personally. And maybe during the breaks that we have, my challenge to you is find somebody you don't know and tell them the answers to these questions. Exchange your marbles with them. And do that during a break. Find one person you don't know and share your water story. So that first question, what's your water? What's the first thing that comes to mind? I have some guesses, Peggy, from Wisconsin, what yours might be. But and those of you from New Jersey, I can guess. Pennsylvania, there's some pretty good water all around all of these states that we're from have great waterways. And what's the water you dream about when you're not there? What's the water you dream about going to, whether it's just for a break or vacation or to take your baby on a Saturday night, perhaps? And when did you fall in love with that water? How old were you? Right? What were the circumstances? What was that like? Remember that moment where you thought, man, I like the way this feels. My river. This is my river. This is my ocean. This is my pool. This is my lake. I feel good standing here or swimming here or jumping off of this thing into that place. And who took you there? Who was your guide? Who was your teacher? Mom, dad, a sister, a brother? And I guarantee you, in every brain in this room right now is a big story. One of your best stories. One of your most maybe emotional memories is connected to that water and those people who took you there for the first time. Your teachers, who taught you about water, who taught you how to swim, who taught you how to sail a boat maybe, or how to put a paddle in the water and move forward, or whatever it was that you learned from them. Right? Around the world, you find people, well, their relationship to water is very simple. It's hydration and hygiene. If they don't have knobs that they turn, the water comes up with drains that take it away. They have buckets and they walk a long distance. For some of us, we've experienced the wildlife that's in the water. Maybe we've gone out on a boat and all of a sudden the animals show up. And that's a show. Everybody moves to the bow of the boat. Everybody watches until the animals decide. So almost everybody moves to the bow. Hopefully the captain stays off the bow. For some people, it's fishing. And when I talk about fishing, I remind people that most of the activity we call fishing is actually standing quietly, waiting, also known as meditating. But if you called it meditation, the fisherman wouldn't come, so we call it fishing. It's basically water meditation. Maybe it's whitewater. Kevin's told me some stories of his whitewater experiences. More of an adrenaline rush. Or maybe it's something a little more relaxed and family-oriented. These wonderful sit-on-top kayaks that you can get. Very low barrier to entry in terms of hardcore skills. You can get in there, learn a few techniques, and go off on the paddle with your family. Standing there on Cape May Beach, right? That guy is, the sailboat or something, I almost look like a dolphin jumping in the background. But that memory that's being made right there, staring out at the ocean, right? Real stuff and real important. But when we're together in or near the water, that's when the magic happens. When you're with your baby on a Saturday night down the shore. When you're with your family holding hands in the water. When you're thinking about those that we've lost. Or thinking about those who are yet to come. Sometimes we go to the water with our non-human friends and just chill. They like it too. Sometimes the waterways across our nation are spectacular and, dare I say, the best in the world. World-class waterways here in the United States. Learning a new skill, getting in the ocean and saying, I have no idea what I'm doing, but here we go. And then falling down and laughing your butt off because it is just fun to fall down in the water. Maybe swimming and seeing an animal like a sea turtle. I love sea turtles. Or this is my friend Brian Scarry, National Geographic photographer, eye to eye, completely immersed in the water. Right? These are the things dreams are made of. But the ocean is there. Right? It takes a guide. It takes the willingness to learn a new skill to get yourself out there. That's my daughter and I, that's Grace. She's 15 now. And that was when she was 8. And we were studying sea turtles in Indonesia. And right then and there, I'm doing the diver okay sign, which means everything's okay. Everything was better than okay. In that moment, it was the best. If you ask Grace, she will tell you her version of that day. She's still thinking about it. If you say, hey Grace, tell me about Indonesia, boom, her brain will explode with a similar story. She wants to live in Indonesia. She wants to go back. She didn't even want to come home. She wanted me to leave her there for 5 months until I went back. I called her mom. I said, Dane, Grace wants to stay for 5 months. She said, you're going to leave her in Indonesia? And I said, yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, bye. So it was mom's fault that she didn't get to stay. I got in big trouble for that. That's where my parents, my late father and mom lived, Fountain Hills, Arizona. Arizona, middle of the Sonoran Desert, not known for its water, but they built this lake with the tallest continually operating fountain in the world in the middle of it, and that's where people gather. The trail around the lake is the most traveled trail in the whole community. People come there to get married, people come there for, this is an Easter morning service, sunrise service, at the water. We bring ourselves to the water for all kinds of reasons. Ceremonial, spiritual, personal, recreational. Apostle Islands up in Lake Superior. Sometimes the water is in this form, solid, still water. We call it ice and snow, but remember that's still water. Beautiful Great Lakes that we have in the United States. Sometimes your water is facilitated by engineering, the bridges that you cross over on your way to work. A well-designed bridge allows you to see the water and enjoy it for those 5 seconds. Right? A poorly designed bridge does not allow you to see the water. Gets you safely across, but without the emotional benefit of seeing the water. Here in Cape May, Lake Lilliot, we have the largest freshwater spring in North America, just down the road. Nice bridge, actually a pair of bridges. And here's an old postcard of Lake Lily. And of course, the water we drink, tap water. You guys remember this invention, this technology from our youth? I think they use bottled water now, but when we were kids, we had bubblers, drinking fountains. And that feeling of standing in line until it was your turn to get up there and turn the knob and just be the king or queen of the school while you just owned that drinking fountain. You knew everybody was in line behind you, and then if you needed more, you got back on line. Of course, There's some other, New Jersey's finest beer. This is a local brew. That's a kind of water, right? And if you want to get technical, it's mostly water. And then Jack Black, he loves the domestic kind of water. So water is not always wild, it's not always lakes and rivers and oceans. Sometimes it's your bath, it's your shower. It's not surprising that most people say they get some of their best ideas as well as sing their best in the shower. I don't know I'm kind of joking about the singing your best, but the sound of being in the shower boosts your creativity. Right? I know lots of people who say I get my best ideas in the shower. And I suggest keep a notepad nearby, because some of those ideas actually are good ideas, and you should jot them down. All right, so let's move forward. Come on. We're stuck on Jack Black here. You guys want to stick with Jack Black for a little while? See what I think. Thought we were going to be watching Jack Black take a bath for the next 15 minutes. Not all bad. All right, so water is everywhere. It's not just here on the coast in Cape May. It's not just up and down the east and west coast. It's everywhere in every state. You're never that far from water. And when I think of my water, I think of my dad. He passed away last year on Earth Day on a full moon, first night of Passover. Left a message for us, I think, by doing that, which was keep going, keep doing what you're doing. He was my guide. He's the person who took me to the water and said, let's get in. I grabbed on his shoulders. I didn't know how to swim. He swam around like a turtle, and I just held on to him. Have you ever done that with your kids? Have you ever done that as a kid with your parent? Right? It just gets passed generationally, that turtle swim or whatever you call it, dolphin ride. And I miss him every day. I was 11 years old. We were up in the Rocky Mountains at Deep Lake. I can remember that day. I felt like the best version of myself. The smell, the taste, the feel of the grass in my toes. We caught trout. We jumped in that cold water every morning. It's the best. Right? That experience. And if that was all I got, I would have held that like a fine gem for my whole life as a kind of a rudder and a feeling of what it feels like just to be whole and free. At that age, I actually loved turtles, and this is the only photo I have of myself with a turtle. That's me on the left and the turtle on the right. We used to catch snapping turtles in the Chesapeake Bay and paint numbers on the shells and then toss them back in the bay, and then sometimes catch them again, sometimes with numbers, sometimes without numbers, and do basic algebra. It was a game, it was play, but it was also learning and falling in love with just being outside and being wild and falling in love with the water. As an adult, I just became, I can honestly say, kind of a turtle geek. I see turtles everywhere. The pattern in the carpet to me resembles a turtle. The chandeliers and a couple of you actually look a little turtle-y. I see turtles in rock formations, and by the way, if you are one of those turtle-like people, it's a good thing, and I won't call you out, but you know who you are. I remember telling my dad that I was not going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a businessman, an engineer, or any of the traditional sort of encouraged career paths. I remember standing there telling him I was going to be a turtle guy. And I felt a little bit like Luke Skywalker about to get lightsabered in half by Darth Vader. That was a little bit of that feeling. You've probably been in that position with your career where you had to tell someone in authority in your life that you were going to do something that they may not have been expecting. But he was encouraging and said, do what you love. And so that's what I did. I found myself going to spend time in Mexico. This is the Baja California Peninsula, where that desert that I spoke about earlier meets the ocean, and studying sea turtles because nobody was doing it there, and they were extremely endangered. And I could talk for a week about turtles, and I'm just going to keep it really brief, but this is the first animal that I put a satellite transmitter on 20 years ago this summer. Her name was Adelita, and the reason I'm including her story is because she was held in captivity for 10 years in a very small tank. And I observed her for the last few years of that, let's call it incarceration. She was always on the west side of the tank, always leaning her head on round tank, about 10 meters max diameter for 10 years. She grew from being a small animal to being an adult size, 223 pounds, beautiful loggerhead sea turtle. And watch this video as it comes around. She swims, this is when we released her with the transmitter. She swims, then she pauses, right there. And then she continues to swim. That pause occurs right about where the edge of the tank would have been. So in her brain, she said, whoa, wall, where's the wall? I actually have no idea what she said in her brain, because I'm not a turtle, but I'm making this up based on this video. So she expected a wall, so she paused. When we live with walls, we move less, obviously. We pause more. We're restricted. Our dreams are on the other side. Even if you're a turtle. But think of the walls that you imagine that hold you back. There are real walls that hold us back. And then there are the imaginary walls that we can swim through. And those are the most interesting ones, right? The walls that are optional. And I salute you for being among the human beings who, for a living, destroy those walls, smash them down into pieces with your students. You are breaking walls daily. Sometimes it's obvious, and sometimes it's a slow progress on that wall. And you're helping people swim literally through walls, figuratively through walls. So that's why I'm telling you a story about this turtle. On the other side of Adelita's perceived wall was her calling. She swam home. And for Adelita, the loggerhead sea turtle, home was 7,000 miles away on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. It took her 368 days to swim that far. We started putting her data, this is 20 years ago, we started putting her data on the internet. I remember my advisor saying, whoa, don't put that data on the internet in real time. And I said, well, why? He said, somebody's going to steal it. I thought, oh, okay. Then I thought about it a little more, and I thought, what would they do with stolen turtle data? Exactly. Legit question, right? I mean, if your fear is having it stolen, you should probably think about that a little more. I couldn't think of anything bad. I could only think of 1,000 good things that one would do with our stolen turtle data. Like help us. Smart people might analyze it with us. Teachers took that data and kids tracked the turtle. They learned algebra. Teachers taught poetry and writing as this turtle was swimming across the ocean. And a few months ago, my daughter came home from school, my 15-year-old, and she had taken the PSAT exam, which is the one you take before the SAT if you're thinking about going to college. She said, Dad, your turtle story from 20 years ago was on the PSAT in the reading comprehension test. So on a couple levels, that was great, but probably the most important to me was in my daughter's eyes for 15 seconds, I was cool. And then it faded. Actually, some of her friends thought I was cool too, which was a huge breakthrough, but really 15 seconds is all I got. So that's the question, what walls have you swum through? What walls have you and your students swum through? And what walls do we all need to swim through still? The imaginary ones and the physical ones. So, wrapping up the turtle story, this is Chuy Lucero. He was called an enemy of nature because he hunted and sold sea turtles. He and his family grew up eating sea turtles. Now, he is the most, I'll use this language, he's the most badass sea turtle protector that I've ever met. Right? Considered a poacher, a criminal, and an enemy of nature. Chuy Lucero, Jesus Lucero, is the best sea turtle protector I know. This is Juan de la Cruz Villejos, responsible for hunting and killing about 3,000 turtles with his harpoon, right? Driving the population of sea turtles closer to the brink of extinction. I have his harpoon head on my desk at home. He said, I've done some damage. I want my grandkids to know these animals. I want to help bring them back. Short version of a great story, 20 years later, the sea turtle population is on the rise. The government downlisted it, which is a good thing, from endangered to threatened. Right? That's a step in the right direction. We are an emerging success story. Not taking our foot off the gas, not celebrating just yet, and we're holding our 20th meeting of Grupo Tortuguero, which is a group of scientists, conservationists, but most importantly, turtle hunters, fishermen, turtle protectors, fisherwomen, business people, who all are beginning to understand if we work together, we can get more done. And towards a simple common goal, which is not letting these animals go extinct. So we're changing the view of these animals from one of simply meat and eggs to one of something you can go and enjoy. People can visit and swim with a turtle. They're making a comeback. And some of my best friends and experiences in the world are connected to this community. The understanding that we are connected to nature. We and nature, we're the same. We are connected to each other. Biologically, it's a fact. We are all made of the same stuff. We breathe in the same air, drinking the same water, living on this same blue marble together. And this is a lot of words, especially for you in the back row there, but basically it's a quote by Gus Speth, who's a scientist, who said, we collect 30 years of science, and then what? If we don't understand how the spiritual and cultural transformation happens, that's just facts, that's just data, that's just information. And we scientists don't know how to do cultural and spiritual transformation. Yet another reason that we need to work together. So I began to have conversations with a group of scientists called neuroscientists who study our brains at the neuron level, at the simplest level, the building blocks of our nervous system, our operating system. We used to understand our brains as a black box. If you wanted to study the brain, you could stimulate it and then see what happened, but you couldn't open the lid and see what was going on inside. So imagine fixing your car, not being allowed to look inside. Just try stuff, listen, try stuff, listen, try to drive a little bit, listen, but never being able to open the hood. Nowadays, we can open the hood. It used to be neuroscientists studied the human brain after the user of the brain was done using it, if you get my drift. We could look at anomalies and compare those to behavior while the individual was alive and try to make some connections. Nowadays, we can look inside while we're still at it. EEG technology measures electricity, allows us to ask simple and complex questions about ourselves and understand the brain better. We can use fMRIs and look at the flow of oxygen in the brain and measure how we respond to challenges, how we respond to joy, how we respond to stress, how we learn best. The technology is giving us access to ourselves in a way that is powerful and useful, most importantly, and useful to all of us. Right? This is a simple cartoon of our brain in love. And my wife does not like to talk about serotonin and dopamine and the brain chemistry of love and romance, but I really do. And to those who might geek out on this stuff, there's a time and a place to talk about the neurochemistry of love. And there's a time where it just shuts down the mood. And maybe that's obvious to most of you, but I'm just sharing that little insight as a tip. Serotonin is not sexy to everybody, but oxytocin may be, but oxytocin is a chemical that connects us, builds trust. So when you're a teacher, you want to build trust. You want to boost oxytocin in the room. You want to boost oxytocin inside your body and inside the body of the student. Right? Sometimes we start off our lectures with, not with a gift, not with a joke, but with some bad news, and that pulls people back. Sometimes we unknowingly are insulting. Sometimes people take the podium and they say the wrong thing, and it's the opposite of oxytocin. It's cortisol, it raises stress. Stress does not help us learn. A stressed out student is not a learning student. Right? A connected, trustful student is a learning student. So, lots of books have been written about the brain on everything, from magic, illusionists, to music, to the brain's ability to heal itself. to creativity, to economics, and on and on. But what was missing was a book about our brain on nature, our brain on water, our brain on the outdoors. Cover of Scientific American magazine a couple years ago, The Neuroscience of Meditation. And if you don't like the word meditation, the neuroscience of just being calm and chilling out. Mindfulness, relaxation. So now we have the science of relaxing. Turns out it's powerful stuff. Right? It isn't hippy-dippy, touchy-feely California stuff. Right? I live in California now, so I get to say that. It's science. And it's the hardest science in the room, unless you're at an astrophysics conference. And that's the second hardest science. Nobel Prizes in neuroscience for people who study practical things like how do we make mental maps that allow us to find our car when we've only parked it there once. How do you do that? It's not magic. Well, it could be your smartphone, but before smartphones, you had the smarter phone, which is your brain. You found your car. I'm gonna guess every time. I may be close. So this is the first generation to have a decent user's guide to our own brain. This is the golden age of neuroscience. Much like the last maybe 20 years was really the golden age of heart science. We learned a lot about our hearts and heart health. This is the age of brain health. You go to Denny's and there's heart healthy icons on the menu, right? You will see brain healthy icons following those. Who doesn't want a healthy brain? We all do. And the more we know about how to do that for ourselves, for our families, for our students, and their families, the better the world's going to be. An owner's manual to your own brain. Pretty handy, right? Imagine going through life without one. Well, that's where we have been. Kind of nice to have a basic owner's guide that's being updated literally every week. So if you search the internet for the connection between our brains and nature, you'd find very little. You'd find these are bubbles representing all the intersections between neuroscience and various fields of human endeavor, from art to music to health and so on. You'd find very little that connects our brain health to being outside in nature, until now. If you could put nature in a pill, it might look like that. It might be called solitogen, and it would have a warning on the label that there are no side effects. It may lower blood pressure, lower heart rate, and promote well-being. Those would be the warnings. There are a lot of pharmaceuticals that have these long lists of warnings. You've seen the ads. Half the ad is this long list of horrific concerns, I guess you could call them. Right? Nature doesn't bring that, but it creates a neurological change, a neurochemical change in us. Right? So to put it in perspective, remember this book, Jaws? I mean, here we are on the Jersey Shore talking about Jaws. That book scared the bejeebers out of me. That movie scared me even more. Actually, I didn't want to take a shower. I didn't want to go in a lake, a pool, a river, the shower, because I thought there could be a great white shark available. So Peter Benchley single-handedly, with the help of his editors and producers, scared a lot of people out of the water. A lot of people lost the best medicine available to them and replaced it with an irrational fear. A lot of people did some damage. And then we killed a lot of sharks in the process, in response. So these books, including mine, are the antidote to that book, trying to get people to go back to the water. Of course, if there is a shark, wait it out, and stay on the beach. You can still enjoy the ocean. Maybe go over to the bay, or down to Lily Lake. That sounds nice, doesn't it? Avoid the sharks, of course. But get out there, get out into the woods, get out into the water. I call this conversation neuroconservation. So the effort to fix the biodiversity, to protect the wild places, combined with neuropsychology. Right? It's relevant to everything we do. Right? Especially relevant, I think, and I think the reason why Kevin asked me to come, to the work that you do. In small, medium, and large, even profound ways, for you yourself, your families, your students, and their families. So when we describe the value of a healthy, let's say a healthy lake or healthy ocean, We usually focus on the ecological, the economic, and the educational value, but we leave out the emotional value. Now scientists can underline that that emotional value is big and real and important. And we need to get out there and experience the emotional connection with the ocean. So I ask you again, why would you gather here next to the ocean versus a few miles inland away from the ocean? And you took a walk out there earlier today. It feels good. That feeling is absolutely real. You feel open. It connects us in our conversations in a different way that's harder to do in a box. So whether it's the Atlantic Ocean or just a pond in your backyard or down the street or the river running through your city or the public fountain that you can sit next to, 60% of diseases are caused or exacerbated by stress. So again, you, your family, your students, their families are dealing with stress on a daily basis. You know, conversations I have with Kevin about his kayak addiction and his need to get in the kayak just as a way to process the stresses of the day or the week from work. It's his medicine. It can be all of our medicine. So our lives are getting more, not less stressful. We're getting more connected, not less connected. For some people, you wake up in the morning to the sound of your iPhone or your smartphone, and then that's the last thing you do before you go to sleep, is check that thing, right? And your day is connected from end to end. Even when we go out to dinner, sometimes you go to dinner and there'll be there'll be the screen in your hand, the screen in your spouse or child's hand, and then 15 other screens, each playing a different sporting event around the room. And we call that relaxing. It's overstimulating, and that's our new normal. Overstimulated is our new relaxation. Right? Step out, away, log out, put it down, and just go out to that beach. Keep walking until you feel the water on your feet. That will hit your reset button better than anything. Our young people, especially girls, as the dad of 2 young girls, I'm very aware that social media is leading to extra anxiety and more depression. Not like they didn't already have that to deal with. Now the social media is taking it up to a whole new level. All the more reason to log out. The water does not like your smartphone. Let me just say, don't go running out into the ocean with your smartphone in hand and then blame me. I will not be responsible for your wet phone. Leave it at home. Leave it in the glove box. Everywhere I go to speak about water, these are the headlines. Ashland, Wisconsin, right? Familiar story. Drug addiction, whether it's opioids, meth, you name it. Not only is that destroying our young people and our adults and our communities and our families, it's also wrecking the waterways, which can be the medicine to fix us. There's a great program in Wisconsin, and I'll talk about it in the workshop, called Northwest Passage, that's introducing kids who are in a residential facility to the river. They're getting wetsuits, cameras, masks, and snorkels, putting their face in the water. Wisconsin's wild rivers are now the medicine for the people who need it most. They're falling in love with the river. And that has a positive feedback loop. When you fall in love with the river, you protect the river. It's a positive feedback loop. So imagine those kids now as grown adults, not only healthy and active, but also avid protectors of the river and guides for the next generation to that river. The extreme version of this stress is called post-traumatic stress, and without going into all the details, lots of people, first responders, our police force, our firefighters, and our military, not to mention everybody who's ever experienced a traumatic event, deals with it in some way, shape, or form. Water is the best treatment I've found, right? Not as a silver bullet or an alternative necessarily, but as a supplemental approach to all the other things that work. I call the conversation about our stressed out, overconnected lives red mind, in contrast to blue mind. Red mind is important. We need red mind to get things done, to get across the finish line, to get to deadlines, right? You need to be fired up sometimes. It's really good. But not all the time. If it's all the time, things break. You break. Your relationships break. Your body literally breaks down at the cellular level. Jim Harrison, the late great writer, said of the 12 or 13 suicides I've known, none of them had any interest in nature. They didn't have a connection to the otherness of nature. They could not make that jump out of themselves. So we find that connection through nature, through our spiritual lives, through architecture, through music. But we need to find it somewhere. Right? How about all of the above? If you could go to the doctor, the caption says, we found this in your brain, and the doctor's holding a monkey with some symbols, you know, the wind-up monkey with the symbols. If we could go to the doctor and have monkey mind removed, we'd all go and just sign up for that procedure. But that's not available. We have to find other ways to do that. And if our toolboxes consist of fear and anger and shame and facts alone, we're going to fall short. You know that as educators. That's not a good enough toolbox. We need gratitude. Those blue marbles are tokens of gratitude to be passed on to someone you want to say thank you to. We need love. We need to say the word love, and we need to show the feeling. We need to build trust, that oxytocin connection. And the research is crystal clear. That green space is good, and you add some blue and it's better. Parks are good. Water parks are better. Balloons are fun. Water balloons, it's party. Right on down the line. So you know, these papers coming out in the psychology journals talking about the research on blue space. Right? So whether you have access to blue space or not, you can present it virtually. You can present it through our imaginations. You can talk about it. The sound of nature. So sound makes blue space portable. The sound of water is relaxing, soothing, and promotes healing and creativity. Use it. Bring it in. Make a recording of the waterways that your students love, of the waterways that you love, and bring it. Put it in the background. Help it drown out maybe the noise so that people can focus more. So this is a common story. I did not make up this idea of blue mind. Going all the way back in every culture, whether the Japanese culture and its reverence and its depiction of the emotions of water, whether Native American cultures that know that water is life. Paintings that people used to line up and pay money to see back in the day before we had screens. People would stand in line to stand in front of depictions of the ocean by the masters. And more recently, people still continue to paint the water. And if that's my phone, turn it off. Speaking of technology, this is a painting by my late brother-in-law who died of ALS 2 years ago, John Imber. That was one of his last paintings. And when he couldn't use his right hand any longer, he switched to his left. And then when he couldn't use his left, my sister strapped his paintbrush to his head. And he painted that. That's Stonington Harbor, Maine. He and my sister fell in love painting the water, and they spent their lives together painting by the water. And it was fitting that his last painting was, of course, of the water. That's my sister's painting of the same view. I just love looking at them side by side. That's John painting without his hands, and that's my sister Jill painting the coast of Maine. That's Rand Ortner, who paints giant pictures, giant paintings of the ocean. His studio is just under the Brooklyn Bridge, by the way. If you're next time you're there, just stop by Rand Ortner. He paints huge triptych paintings. Never includes the land. And the New York art scene is rough. And they say, "Where's the irony? Where's the angst?" And he says, "I'm just painting the water because I love it." Yeah, that doesn't go over that well in the scene in New York, in the art scene. So the cover of the New Yorker, speaking of New York, water on the cover of the New Yorker. Watch for it this summer. The New Yorker loves to put water on their cover. And then, of course, the recent cover with the big man doing the belly flop right into the pool there on the right. Corona has built a brand around, I'm going to say publicly, mediocre beer, but they sell it with Blue Mind. So beer in a clear bottle, which if you're a beer aficionado, you know it's a no-no. You put it in a darker bottle to protect it. But they've sold their beer all over the world with these ad campaigns that connect us to the water. Remember the Nestea plunge? Going into the water backwards with a smile on your face? That worked. right? That worked really well. There was a whole period of my childhood where the only way I went into the water was backwards, thinking about Nestea with a smile on my face. When we go fishing, it's not about the fish. Right? That Trace Adkins, a country song, she thinks we're just fishing. When I hear that, it reminds me, like, it's not about fishing, it's about the connection. And then this great movie, Shawshank Redemption. Morgan Freeman played the character Red. The last line of the film, I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope. Cut. Run the credits. That's awesome. Right? He's dreaming of the Pacific. Kept him going, dreaming of the big freedom. But big freedom, big blue freedom. Another film, Moonlight, character in that film, water. Water did not win an Academy Award. The film, yes, many Academy Awards. Water was also a character, a leading character in that film. Maybe the connector throughout the film. So the role of water in our lives, let's talk about it. Let's embrace it. Let's bring it to the surface. Let's teach it. We don't teach our kids that ocean that they own, that beach that they can go to anytime is theirs, and it's their medicine. We need to bring back our waterfronts and protect them. It's happening in cities around the world. Right? Pittsburgh, that's Pittsburgh. A few years ago, if you said, let's jump in the river in Pittsburgh, people would laugh at you. Let's go down to the water and let's have a look. No, people turn their backs on the rivers. Now they're turning and facing the river. Water is the world's first and foremost medicine. Not just for physical health, but for mental health. That's the take-home message. Ecosystem services and trophic cascades, that's the talk of academics who are ecologists. We need to talk about neurologic cascades and emotional services that our healthy waterways in nature give us. Emotional services and the neurologic cascades. And that neurologic cascade is what has led me to be here today. I fell in love as a boy with the water. Decided to be a marine biologist and to keep going and to think more about the human connection to water. But it was the emotional connection. Not just the science, not just the logic, right? Not just the facts. Certainly not anger and guilt and fear that pulled me through my career. And I think you could say the same thing. Is love, your emotional connection that pulls you through. So I'm going to spend some time this afternoon after a break talking about Go Deeper, which is sort of part 2, where we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of how Blue Mind intersects with our lives at each age. And I call it the 7 ages of water. And here's a little preview. Birth, play, the lover, where we become passionate for ideas, the fighter, where we fight for those and sometimes fall down as we fight, the justice, where we're mostly in that age now, where we're responsible for big decisions and leadership. Ebb and flow, when we start to feel gravity is heavier. And then finally, the last age of 7 is death. At every age, water is important. And we'll unpack that in the afternoon workshop. I want to leave you with this here. Reminder that your blue marble is to go with you. Don't leave it behind. But I want you to pass it on to someone. It's a gift, and it's a gift that holds gratitude. And I know you don't get calls in the middle of the night to say thank you. You don't get cards in the mail that often to say thank you. But as we heard, your work has a ripple effect that is reaching millions upon millions. Dare I say the entire country is impacted in a good way by your work. And most people have no idea. And so I like to share blue marbles as just simple thank yous. But they come with responsibility. You need to take your marble and pass it on. Find someone that you haven't said thank you to in a while or ever, and tell them your version of the Blue Mind story. Tell them, may have nothing to do with water, but take your marble and pass it on and thank them. Ask them to pass it on. And so our marbles have been shared with over 1 million people around the world. And I just want to leave you with this story. This is Dave Gomez. I met him at a conference He had been incarcerated for 17 years and was out, and I gave him a blue marble at the end of our conversation. I said, "What are you thinking?" Because he was holding it like that, and he said, "Free." That's what it feels like to look at this marble. I never could have imagined this 8 months ago, locked in my cell. So our connection to water can help us feel free, help us pull towards that goal. And I've never been incarcerated, and I hope that that stays true. But if I find myself stuck in a box, stuck behind a wall, I think my dreams of water will be the thing that helps pull me through. And when I become free, getting in the water again, feel really good. So you have full toolboxes, and I know very little about your day-to-day work other than what I've heard today, what I've seen walking around and visiting your tables, and what I've read in the program, and what I know in my own life. I know that you have a lot of tools and a lot of technologies and a lot of challenges. But my role here is to suggest an additional set of tools as they relate to water. And in your hands, in your creative, practical hands, I imagine you have some really good ideas, and I'd love to hear how you think this conversation may engage with your work in a positive way. So thank you very much for inviting me to come speak.
I just want to say we have blue sky too.
Yes, yeah,
to the west.
Yes. It's coming.
It's coming.
All right, Jay, thank you so much. All right.
All right, so folks, I know we went a little bit over time. We do have workshops after this. They were supposed to start at 2 o'clock. All right, I didn't want to cut anybody short because everybody that shared with us this afternoon was very valuable information. I have Clyde over here if you want to get a couple other people from the board. Oh, good. All right, so you want to get your stickers, and please at some point fill out an evaluation. You don't have to do it now, but sometime fill out an evaluation of the workshops. So the workshops are going to start at 2:30. Instead of ending at 3:15,